You're listening to a new episode of The Brave Technologist, and this is our interview we're releasing from our series of guests we sat down with during the Rare Evo conference in Vegas this past summer. If you haven't heard the others yet, we encourage you to go back and tune into some of the live from Rare Evo episodes that feature leaders in crypto and Web3, everything from influencers like Crypto Wendy and the Coos to enterprise organizations like Citibank, discussing how they're embracing Web3, and even nonprofits like Stand With Crypto, who are leading the movement forward with legislators and the policymakers. In this episode, we discussed how DeFi has evolved from being tech-driven to user experience-driven, what's standing in the way of mainstream DeFi adoption and how builders are fixing it, how Layer 2 solutions are shaping and complicating the next phase of DeFi, what's holding back tokenized equities, and what it'll take to overcome regulatory hurdles, and how Matcha is making it easier for newcomers to start trading in DeFi. And now for this week's episode of The Brave Technologist. Thorsten, welcome to Brave Technologist. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Pretty good. How about yourself?
Yeah, great. No, thanks for making the time. And so we're here at Rare Evo. You're representing 0x and Matcha. Can you give us a little sneak peek about what you're talking about today and how it relates to your work?
Yeah, happy to. I'm on a panel later today talking about bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3. It's a few folks from like TradFi and a few folks from Web 3. And yeah, really discussing how can we sort of make Web 3 more accessible? How can we get a billion users into the space interacting with the protocols and products?
Fantastic, yeah. And you've been building in crypto since 2017. How has the DeFi user experience evolved, and where is it still falling short from your point of view?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting. I feel like if you look back at like 2017, 2018, when sort of DeFi started to emerge, I think everything was very like infrastructure and technology focused. That's we saw really cool projects come up back then, like MakerDAO with like the DAI stablecoin. We saw the first AMMs with Uniswap. We saw borrow and lend on Compound. And so really cool technical innovations. But I think the focus of the products was really getting that functionality out to the user, right? They were not mobile first, they were web apps, sometimes a little bit clunky to use, right? Like you had to do multiple like wallet interactions.
Right.
And so it was really good for like power users who were like deep in the trenches, but I think most of these apps weren't really like super accessible for sort of mainstream users. And so now if we look at like what's being built in the space today, I think we're seeing a lot more focus on really like delightful UX, right? Making these apps look more like they're Web 2, abstracting away complexity, hiding sort of all the plumbing that's underneath, and really just helping users do the things that they come to the app to do. And so I think that's sort of the big shift I feel like I've been seeing over the last couple of years. It's sort of moving from that pure technology focus to more of a UX focus like we've seen it in other consumer apps. And then, yeah, I think where it's still falling short, I feel like we haven't fully gotten there yet, right? So like a lot of the technical infrastructure just isn't in the place where you can hide away all the complexity, right? So if you interact with tokens across multiple chains, it's still not fully possible to abstract away all of that, right? You still have to deal with gas tokens on one chain versus gas tokens on the other chain. You have to deal with bridging, you have to deal with potentially using different wallets. And so I think that's sort of one space where there's a lot of opportunity to keep simplifying and to really make these apps feel like they're more Web 2 apps, but powered by all the cool things that
Are you like optimistic about where, you know, whether it's like EIPs or other things that are on roadmaps of that getting better in the near future?
I think so. I mean, honestly, one really big one that landed recently is like 4337 around account abstraction and smart contract wallets. I think that actually makes onboarding into apps so much easier. Right? And we've seen that, right? There's a lot more like mobile apps for like crypto trading that are popping up. And you do social login, you on-ramp some funds and you're sort of good to go. You don't have to deal with EOAs, you don't have to deal with like wallet notifications and switching, especially on mobile devices. So I think that helped a lot. I think like the paymasters that are built in 4337 as well, right? Like that helps with like abstracting away the need for gas. So I think there's been a good amount of like the technical groundwork has actually been laid recently. Now it's more around, let's get it to full adoption. And then I think the tricky thing is now a lot of users have these EOAs, right? And we're all used to using them, but none of the stuff works with EOAs, unfortunately, right? So it's like, so now it's like, okay, can we find a way to make it work with EOAs for the existing users, or does everybody essentially need to migrate to smart contracts? But I think for new users, this actually solves a lot of the pain points now.
Yeah, and how do you think, are there any other ways that we can make even trading on decentralized exchanges a little more accessible or understandable for new people into crypto that might not be as familiar with these things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so I think if I look at like the core trading experience, but I think a lot of like DEXs now, if you look at like Matcha, for example, or like Uniswap or like Jupiter, right, they have actually really simple, nice ways of like token A is like token B and you can swap. I think it's not that much different from going to like a Coinbase or like a Binance to do it on a centralized exchange. I think the tricky thing in Web3 on DEX is you essentially have access to everything that's out there.
Right.
And most of what's out there is not great.
Right,
so,
right.
Right, versus if I trade on Coinbase, I know, okay, like the token went through some vetting. Is it a quality project? I don't know, right? But like at least it's most like, well, it's very certainly not a honeypot. It's not a straight up scam or rug pull, right? There's some vetting that went into it. Versus if I trade on a DEX, it's really hard, right? Like I see a token, I see a lot of copycats. So for example, if I go on a DEX right now, I search for Pengu, I probably find like 50 tokens.
Yeah, no, it's
Pengu,
true.
right?
It's
and
true.
So,
And it added a space at the end or some character switch, and there's no real. You can kind of get a feel, but if you're new to it, you don't know, right? Or 10 different flavors of a different token, right? I think that makes sense. Trust and transparencies are kind of like big themes in DeFi. Like, what does execution transparency mean, and why is it critical for user trust?
Yeah, so I think if I look at execution transparency, let's go back to like TradFi or even centralized exchanges, it's sort of like I'm going to buy token A by trading token B, and I know exactly how much I'm going to get. Right? I know if I press the button, it's going to go through, it's going to get filled. The worst possible price is sort of what I had selected in my order, right? Versus on DeFi, I think when DEXs, sometimes there's this issue where some DEXs might quote really optimistic, then I try to actually swap, it doesn't work, or because somebody else already took that trade, or there's too much movement in the pools. There might be really high like slippage tolerance is set by default, so I trade something and I actually move the market price significantly against me, right? And so I think, and some of that is fine, right? Because like I think I want to be able to trade in a pool that has no liquidity, right? It's better. I still want to be, like sometimes it's better I cost 10% slippage but I get out than I don't get out at all. But I think as a user I need to be aware, right? Like I don't want to be in a situation where I'm like, oh, I'm going to sell $1,000 of this token. I expect to get $1,000 and then, wait, well, I'm only getting 900. What happened?
Right.
But if I'm told, hey, you're only going to get 900 because you're going to cause a massive price impact because there's no liquidity, I think that's actually okay. It's not ideal, but it's better than not trading at all. And so I think just being more transparent about what can happen, how sort of execution might impact price and all of that. For example, on Matcha, we just launched Matcha on Meta, which is a meta aggregator, right? So it goes out and compares price. Like if I make a trade, it goes and compares all the different aggregators, like Odos, 1inch, Kyber, 0x. And what we do is actually we don't take the quotes at face value. We run them through a simulation engine to see, could this even be filled? And we sometimes see, right, like some aggregators quote really optimistically. Once you simulate it, you either come up with a much worse price or the transaction fails outright because they sort of assumed, okay, everything is going exceptionally well. They execute this at top of block. Nobody taps into this pool before. And it's probably not super realistic. And I think just building out tools like that to help the users understand what they can ultimately expect.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I can't tell you how many people who I've walked through on user support things with things who don't understand what slippage even means or like why it's important. And it's kind of like these whole new terms that are new to people, but people in the space kind of understand them. But yeah, and kind of you touched on some of this already, but in your mind, what does a truly user-first DeFi experience look like?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's probably something around like it feels a lot like you're interacting with a Web 2 app, but it's powered by Web 3 on the back end, right? Because there's a lot of advantages of Web 3 and DeFi powering user experiences, but it's decentralized, there's a lot less like regulation, you can do a lot more things, but it's more accessible, it's borderless, permissionless. But I think what Web 2 does exceptionally well is like the user experience, right? Sort of onboarding is seamless. If you forget your password, you can just recover it, right? It's not like, oh, you forgot to write down this 24-character passphrase, well, good luck, right? Your funds are gone, right? And so I think bringing some of those like paradigms from Web 2 over so that the experience becomes really easy, it's delightful, it's fast, right? But then we have sort of the decentralized infrastructure and all the cool protocols that power Web3 do all the heavy lifting on the back end.
It makes sense. It seems there's like kind of a resistance to like almost wanting to, not a resistance to, but people almost have to reinvent the wheel on things that are already figured out by Web 2 apps. And it's just like, there needs to be more. I totally agree with you on that. Like, there have been an explosion of L2s and L2-ish like solutions out there over the past few years. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you have had to encounter with Matcha and DeFi UX with this expansion? Last time I checked, there were close to like 100 or so different solutions, and some are more active than others. But from your point of view, like, what are some of the challenges you all see with this emerging area?
Yeah, it's a really interesting problem, right? Because if you look at sort of the explosion in chains, it actually solved a really critical problem, which was speed and throughput, right? Like if you go back to like the NFT hype in 21, anytime a new NFT collection dropped, you had like $100 gas to make it use. It was not usable, took forever, was expensive. And so I feel like that's what something all the L2s and all the L1s solved really well, right? It's like we can now have super fast, super cheap transactions. So I think like Base's mission was sub 1 second, sub 1 cent for a transaction. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think the problem that came out of this whole explosion of chains is we started to really fragment the ecosystem. And so now, right, like tokens are not just on Ethereum or maybe like Arbitrum or something, or Avalanche, but they're now on like 15, 20, 30 chains. I think the last time I checked, DeFi Llama tracks like 250 chains with any amount of DEX activity. Right? And it's a ridiculous amount of complexity. And then not all of these are EVM compatible, so you need different wallets potentially to interact with them. You need gas tokens on each chain, and you need to know which token is on what chain, right? And so I think it just made it really complicated to interact. And I think another part from a DEX perspective, it started to also fragment liquidity.
Right.
Because I now no longer have ETH to USDC pools on Ethereum. I need to have them on each EVM chain. And so some of these pools might actually be pretty shallow. And so if I want to do ETH to USDC on some obscure EVM, like L2 EVM, I might actually get really bad prices. Versus if I do ETH to USDC on Ethereum, I can pretty much do whatever I want, right?
Yeah,
I'm never gonna move it. And so yeah, I think those are some of the challenges, and I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity to almost counteract that sort of fragmentation by finding a way to unify that in the back end again, right? I think like Superchain ERC20 is really interesting, right? From like on the OP stack, where it's like, hey, here's a shared ERC token standard for this asset, and if you want to move from like one chain to the other and they're both on the OP stack, you can just burn on one, mint on the other. And so you unify liquidity on the back end. I think Circle's CCTP does it to some degree as well, right? Where I could seamlessly move USDC between the different chains through the infrastructure. And I think it helps sort of like make this a little bit easier, but it still leaves the problem, right? If I have, let's say I have the Arrow token on Base and I want Pengu on Solana, how do I do that, right? It's I can either do it myself and be okay, I go Arrow to USDC, then I go find a bridge to USDC from Base to Solana, and then on Solana I swap, or I find like a cross-chain router, which I think that's where then there's a lot of opportunity. And we've been building this on 0x and Matcha, right? It's like, how do we help users move truly from any to any token without having to worry about which chain it is? Because ultimately, I don't think the user cares about most users are not going to be like, oh, I want this token on Base and I have this token on Solana. They're just going to be, I have this token, I want to sell it, and I want to buy that token.
Right, exactly.
They just happen to be on different chains, but that's sort of the plumbing, and it doesn't need to be shown to the user, I think.
Yeah, and the discovery of finding that they've got the wrong flavor of something is often like a big turnoff. I mean, it just seems like a huge opportunity for something like agentic AI to come out, like, emerging. Like, it would be cool to have agents that are just kind of helping you to get the right variant of token or whatever, and just make it really dumbed down for the user, in that front. But are you guys doing anything with AI? Are you guys exploring that at all, like R&D types of stuff, or?
Yeah, so we are not doing anything ourselves directly, but we support a bunch of builders that are working sort of in the agentic AI space, and they use, like, the 0x API can be used for those workflows, and I think really, really well, actually. And
That's
so especially,
awesome.
We just released our Solana, like, swap API.
Nice.
We just released an alpha for our cross-chain API, and so I think having all those building blocks, I think really excited to see sort of agentic workflows, like, really pick that up and and build really cool products for our users.
That's super cool. Yeah, we love 0x and you guys' API on our swaps. So how do you think about designing products that work across multiple chains without overwhelming user? I know we talked about that a little bit before, but like, is there any, like, are you guys thinking about that with the design of your products? How are you kind of approaching that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's a little bit more relevant for us on the Matcha side than on 0x. So 0x is APIs, so like the front end is sort of built by our customers, but on Matcha, right, we have a user-facing product, and we currently have cross-chain swaps in there, and I don't think it's essentially at it's at that level of user experience that we ultimately want it to be. Right?
Yeah,
it's still very much like, okay, select the chain you come from, now select your token, now select the chain you want to go to, select the token, which I think is okay, but it's not great, right? Because a lot of tokens only exist on one chain, especially, well, at least the legit version of the token exists on one chain. And so I think there's actually opportunity with to use AI-based search algorithms or ranking algorithms too, right? To figure out, okay, if a user wants to interact with Pengu, it's very likely that they want the Solana version, right?
Yeah.
They don't want the Pengu coin on base, which is just a ripoff, right, that somebody created. And that's $5 market cap. And so I think it's really around how can we strip away some of that complexity, right? How can we remove the awareness of the chain almost, right? It's for the user that wants to see it, we show it, but the basic experience should probably really be token to token.
Yeah.
Chains is on the back end. I think it's also gas, right? The default for most users should probably be it's a gasless experience, because then you don't have to worry about oh, do I have the gas token on my source chain, and then if I swap to this new chain, do I now also need gas there if I want to swap it out, right? Versus if you can just wrap it all in a single interaction, any to any across chains, including gas, really simple, really seamless. I think that's probably a really good product for most users.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good product for every user, right? Because there are people in crypto especially that really want that control, and we've seen that with Matcha Meta, right? It's there's users who want to be able to see, okay, here's 8 integrators, I see the route, and I want to be the one picking. I don't want you to pick for me, I'm the one picking. And I think for those users, maybe wrapping it all together isn't the right way, right? They want to see the complexity, but I think it's almost starting with that simple experience and then having sort of okay, you want to go to advanced mode or pro mode. Here now we show all of this to you. But it doesn't have to be like that for everybody.
No, it makes sense. And this summer too, we've seen emergence of new tokenized equities and things like that, where at least in this day, it looks like it could be moving to a place where you might start to see these on DEXs over time. I mean, even though right now they seem kind of. Are you guys excited about this, or are you guys looking into this? I'd love to get your take on it, coming from a DEX, on this new kind of area of tokenized equities and other assets.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I mean, I think essentially our company mission is to create a tokenized world where all value can flow freely, right? And as such, I do believe in, ultimately, I think everything is going to be tokenized and everything is going to be moving on chain, and then we can use DEXs to trade it. I think with securities tokens, what's been holding us back right now is regulation, right? It's and a lot of times that I think you have players older, they've been tokenizing money market funds, really cool products, but essentially they've just geo-fenced it out of the US.
Right.
Or they've said, okay, it's qualified purchases, accredited investors only, because there's just too much ambiguity with the regulatory regime, right? And you don't want to end up in a spot where the SEC comes after you and said, well, you're an unregistered securities broker,
right?
But we're going to come after you now. That's not now.
We know how that feels.
Yeah. And so that's why and so essentially I think right now there's more clarity coming from the regulators under this new SEC regime, and I think it will really help here, right? And I think Robinhood's announcement at ETC a couple of weeks ago on moving to tokenized stocks, super exciting. And then Superstate, right? They're working on tokenized stocks for both public traded, but also for companies to essentially take themselves private on the blockchain.
Right.
And those are definitely things we're looking into, and I would love to be able to support them. And it seems like there's ways to do it now with a DEX environment that are regulatory compliant, right? Where it's you rely on KYC, on allow listed parties, you only trade between those. It's probably a little bit too early to route them through AMMs at this point, especially all the AMMs are pretty much staying away from it, right? Because they don't want to have the SEC come after them for it. But I think we're getting close to being able to have sort of RFQ type processes, right? We have the market maker on one side, you have a user on the other side, it routes through a protocol like 0x, and you'll be able to, let's say, trade a superstate tokenized security or like a Robinhood tokenized security if it's between allow listed parties. But yeah, hopefully in the future, if you look a few years on the road, everything is tokenized, everything runs through AMMs, and we can just trade these tokens just like any other crypto.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and part of me is like, okay, cool, you get the exposure. And then part of me is also like just remembering DeFi summer and like how wild like all the derivative products got and all these things and the experimentation too. And I think it'd be super exciting to kind of see it play out. Yeah, for listeners who want to explore DeFi or try Matcha for the first time, where should they start?
Yeah, so right now I think the best way to use Matcha is you can just go to the website, you can create a wallet sort of directly on matcha.xyz,
nice.
One of those embedded smart contract wallets. You can send some funds over from like a centralized exchange, or if you already have a wallet, you just connect it, it's even easier. But yeah, essentially just go to matcha.xyz, give it a try. Or like there's other apps out there. I think wallets are a really good starting point to explore this whole ecosystem as well, right? Like Coinbase wallet or Phantom or MetaMask or any like Brave wallet in your browser, exactly, right? And so I think a lot of users actually probably use a product already that has a wallet embedded at this point. And so just sort of giving that a try and sort of playing around with it. And I think with a lot of these products too, right? It's like you probably don't want to go in and like, oh, I'm going to put $50,000 in here and I'll start being like a big whale trader, right? It's like you can start with like small amounts. That's the beauty, I think, also of these newer like L2s, right? It's like transaction cost is super cheap. So if you want to just test it out, you can just deposit $10 and like play around with it a little bit and get some exposure. And as you get more comfortable, you start doing like more meaningful investments. But it's really easy nowadays to sort of get onboarded.
Awesome. Yeah. No, we covered a lot. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like our audience to know about what you guys have? Anything cooking or stuff you're coming out with soon or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for the users or for the audience to go ahead and check out Matcha. And I'm always, if anybody like has feedback, they can always ping me on X, on Telegram. So
cool.
Always love to hear back from our users and talk to them. So honestly, would love honest feedback. So
where can they find you on X? What's your handle?
Jaeckel.
Okay, cool. We'll put it in the show notes too.
Okay, perfect. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
It's great. Thank you for coming out today, and this is a great conversation, and I'd love to have you guys back too and kind of check back in on things. But thanks so much.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening to the Brave Technologist podcast. To never miss an episode, make sure you hit follow in your podcast app. If you haven't already made the switch to the Brave browser, you can download it for free today at brave.com and start using Brave Search, which enables you to search the web privately. Brave also shields you from the ads, trackers, and other creepy stuff following you across the web.